The Exodus conspiracy. Did 2 million slaves really cross the Red Sea? The Exodus, the centerpiece of Old Testament history, is the biggest target for biblical skepticism. The claim is simple and brutal. If 2 million people left Egypt and wandered the desert for 40 years, where are the bodies, the potsherds, the campsites? Egypt, the most meticulous record-keeper of the ancient world, is utterly silent. Skeptics claim this silence is proof that the event never happened. Today, we turn that silence into a shout. We explore why the lack of Egyptian records is not a flaw, but a confirmation. And we uncover the archaeological evidence that points to a monumental, later Exodus event. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life. Faith and facts, where ancient mysteries meet modern exploration. The main problem skeptics pose against the Exodus is the archaeological void. The supposed failure to find evidence for the movement of such a huge population in the Sinai Desert, compounded by the complete omission of the event in official Egyptian history. Our thesis is this: the traditional dating for the Exodus is often miscalculated. A later, more historically destructive Exodus event aligns perfectly with the settlement patterns found in Canaan. Furthermore, the systematic and intentional omission of the catastrophe by a highly propagandistic Egyptian state is, ironically, the strongest contextual proof that the event was too devastating not to have happened. The skeptics claim. The skeptical argument against the Exodus rests on two critical pillars: the problem of scale and the argument from silence. The problem of scale is based on the biblical numbers, Exodus 12:37, which imply a population of perhaps 2 million people. Critics argue that a nomadic population of that size would have left an unmistakable, visible trail of debris, millions of pieces of pottery, thousands of campfires, cemeteries, and countless artifacts across the Sinai Peninsula. The fact that the Sinai Desert shows no large-scale, long-term occupation by a single, massive group during the proposed timeframe is presented as conclusive proof of fabrication. The argument from silence is even more potent in the public mind. Egyptian history is a continuous, detailed record of pharaohs, campaigns, temple building, and trade. Yet, there is no single Egyptian text that says, "We suffered 10 plagues, our firstborn died, and we lost our massive slave workforce to the desert." For a state whose entire power structure was based on the pharaoh's supposed divine invincibility. The systemic failure to record a national humiliation of this magnitude is viewed as proof that the event never occurred. Skeptics propose that the Exodus is a myth of origin, perhaps a conflation of a much smaller group of Semitic people leaving Egypt, later exaggerated into a national epic during the exile to build solidarity. They see the entire narrative, from the plagues to the crossing of the sea, as pure theological fiction. Because the archaeological smoking gun of 2 million people's trash is absent. We must tackle this skepticism by reconsidering both the scale and the silence from a historical and archaeological perspective that respects the biblical text as a primary source. The core evidence revealed. Let's first address the argument from silence by examining the nature of Egyptian records. Ancient Egypt was a highly centralized, totalitarian state driven by a relentless focus on propaganda. Pharaohs documented victories and national strength. They never recorded defeats, humiliations, or national catastrophes caused by their own failure or the intervention of a foreign god. First, the power of omission. Consider the reign of Akhenaten, who attempted to introduce monotheism. After his death, his memory was systematically erased. Cartouches were chiseled out, and his temples were dismantled. This was not unusual. A national catastrophe like the Exodus, where a foreign god humiliated and destroyed the gods of Egypt, wiping out the firstborn and destroying the pharaoh's army, had occurred. The state machinery would have been immediately mobilized, not to record it, but to obliterate all memory of it. The silence on the Exodus is entirely consistent with the complete loss of the main slave workforce and the military destruction it entailed. An event that brought the state to its knees is precisely the kind of event Egyptian propaganda would bury. Second, the Red Sea Army. The loss of the elite chariot army in the Red Sea, Exodus 14:28, would have been the ultimate military disgrace. The Egyptian empire was founded on military superiority. A record of losing an entire army to a tidal or meteorological event that was seen as divine judgment would have destabilized the pharaoh's legitimacy instantly. The lack of records proves the event was catastrophic. Now, let's address the problem of scale and dating. Many traditional Exodus dates place the event in the 15th century BC early date. However, a stronger case can be made for a later date, around 1250 BC, during the reign of Merneptah, or a contemporary, as supported by the archaeological evidence in Canaan. The Canaanite settlement. The biblical account demands that the Israelites arrived in Canaan under Joshua and established a presence in the hill country. Archaeology shows a sudden, massive wave of new settlements appearing in the hill country of Canaan around 1200 BC, corresponding to the end of the Late Bronze Age. This pattern, characterized by distinct four-room houses and a lack of pig bones reflecting Hebrew dietary laws, is the strongest archaeological evidence for the sudden arrival of a large, new population, groups of Israelites. Contextual proof and alignment. The crucial non-biblical external document that bridges the gap between the Exodus and the Israelite settlement in Canaan is the Merneptah Stele, discovered in 1896. This inscription from Pharaoh Merneptah, around 1208 BC, details his military campaign in Canaan. It contains the first known extra-biblical reference to Israel. The relevant line states, "Israel is laid waste, its seed is not." This statement is explosive for three reasons. Late Bronze, Early Iron Age timing. It places the people of Israel in Canaan around 1208 BC. It's perfectly aligning with the later Exodus dating and the sudden settlement patterns observed in the hill country. Nature of the reference. The hieroglyphic determinative used for Israel is the sign for a people group, or ethnos, rather than a geographical city-state. This suggests that Israel was a dispersed, non-urbanized, and recently settled population. Precisely what the nomadic Exodus generation would have been after 40 years of wandering and the early campaigns of Joshua. The context of the phrase, Merneptah, is boasting about crushing Israel. Why would a pharaoh need to boast about defeating a people if they had never left his control? The context strongly suggests that Israel was a known, established, if still nascent enemy in the territory of Canaan that had successfully separated itself from Egyptian dominance. Merneptah's boast, therefore, confirms the prior existence of an independent, large body of people, the Israelites operating in the Promised Land, confirming the consequence of the Exodus. Regarding the problem of scale in the desert wandering, modern scholars often misapply standards. A massive group of 2 million people traveling for a short time leaves traces. A nomadic group, traveling and camping in rotation over 40 years, would deliberately avoid leaving permanent structures and would reuse materials, minimizing waste. Furthermore, God provided manna and water miraculously, Exodus 16:17, thus eliminating the need for the millions of pieces of pottery, grain silos, and water cisterns that archaeologists expect to find. The lack of typical large-scale settlement debris is consistent with a divinely sustained, nomadic camp that lived off the land and the miraculous provision of God, making the skeptical demand for conventional evidence fundamentally inappropriate for this unique biblical event, significance, and defense. The Exodus did not fail to happen because of Egyptian silence. The silence exists because of the Exodus. It was a national humiliation so profound that the highly propagandistic Egyptian state systematically erased it. Coupled with the powerful external confirmation of the Merneptah Stele naming Israel as an established people group in Canaan, by the late 13th century BC, the archaeological record moves firmly back into alignment with Scripture. The new settlement pattern in the hill country and the Egyptian omission speak volumes. The Exodus narrative is not a fictional exaggeration. It is a historical record of a catastrophic event whose effects rippled across the ancient Near East and established the people of God. If you found the evidence in this deep dive compelling, know this. The mission of Faith and Facts is to systematically dismantle skepticism by showing that the Bible is the most archaeologically confirmed book in human history. To see the full scope of the evidence, make sure you watch our full-length documentary compilation, Ancient Truths, The Unshakable Foundations of Scripture, where we tie all these proofs together. If you want to support this work, please hit that like button, subscribe for weekly evidence updates, and share this video with one skeptic you know. This presentation utilized AI-generated imagery and synthesized voiceover narration to maximize the visual quality and delivery of this historical and archaeological analysis. Thank you for watching, and may your faith be strengthened by the facts.